Greetings, Earth Stars. Eliane Nicole here, coming to you with a little cosmic weather report on Jupiter into Pisces. And I did a part 1 video the evening of December 28th. So if you haven't watched that yet, I encourage you to go and watch that one first, because I'm going to try and talk about a few different things here. I just wanted to do a part 2 video because I really went over the broad strokes in the first video, and I forgot to talk about a couple of things that might help you understand the transit better. For instance, in 2021, Jupiter already dipped into Pisces for 2 months, from May 13th to July 27th. So if you look back on what was going on for you during that time of the year, you might get an idea of what's going to come into bloom in a bigger, broader, more long-term way in 2022 for you. Also, Jupiter was in Pisces back in 2010, so 12 years ago. If you think about what was going on for you in 2010, you might also have a clue about what the Jupiter storyline is. It could be, coming around full circle of a cycle, or similar themes, but now in some different part of life. So, and again, this all depends on your own astrology. Where Jupiter in Pisces is moving through your chart depends on what your rising sign is and which house it's in. For instance, if you're a Gemini rising, then Jupiter is moving through your 10th house of career and attainment. But if you're a Pisces rising, Jupiter is moving through your 1st house, which is the house of self and your personality. And if you're a Virgo rising, then Jupiter in Pisces would be running through your 7th house, which is your house of marriage and relationships. And so you see, even though there's this kind of broad energy of Jupiter overall that affects the collective, the way it affects our personal lives depends on our own personal astrology. So when I do these videos, I am talking about kind of what the energy is in for the air, what the energy is in the air for, the collective. And, I encourage one-on-one readings to get more specific. But yeah, so you can look to 2010 to see what was going on around then, and that might give you some clues as to what to kind of expect with the transit in the first 5 months of 2022. But the last time that Jupiter was conjunct Neptune in Pisces was 165 years ago. And this was the 1856 signing of the Paris Treaty. And this had to do largely with Russia and Turkey. Turkey was part of the Ottoman Empire, and all these nations got together basically and made the Black Sea neutral territory and protected Turkey from Russia. And it ended the Crimean War. So I think that maybe we'll see some big things with Russia and their territories, or Turkey, in 2022 as a result around when that conjunction happens with Neptune and Jupiter in terms of politics. I think that that would be a good gauge, given that that's what was going on. We may see some kind of full circle historical event to that. Countries and cities and regions have their own astrology as well. And that's another thing that I wanted to say. Like, when I talk about Jupiter, Jupiter is just one thread of what's going on in 2022. And a big part of the reason I wanted to do a video about Jupiter is just because we have had such a difficult couple of years in astrology. And I wanted to talk about something that's optimistic and hopeful and happy and giving and merciful. However, Jupiter is just one strand in the tapestry of 2022. And it's an important one because it is where a lot of, it is the place in your chart and in your personal life that I think you will be able to look to for feelings of abundance and stability and wholeness and compassion and mercy and blessings, despite the fact that there are also going to be very difficult things that we're still dealing with in the world. I mean, America, speaking of countries having their own astrology, America's coming up for its Pluto return in 2022. And America's Pluto return is going to have 3 exact hits. I would say, personally, it's been in pre-shadow since 2020. And so I would say that the events of 2020 in many ways were building up to what the Pluto return will actually bring. The Pluto return is going to have 3 exact hits. I'm going to do another video about that. I want to stick to Jupiter, but I do want to make it clear that I didn't want to be all like Pollyanna, like, oh, 2022, we're headed into utopia, all is well again. That's not the case, but but there is goodness, and there are opportunities, and there are blessings, and we do have to appreciate those. You have to recognize the blessing to receive it. And that's an important thing about Jupiter, because Jupiter in and of itself, it's not necessarily good or bad. Again, that depends on your own astrology. Growth and expansion isn't always good. We don't want tumors to grow. We don't want confusion to grow. We don't want overdose rates or suicide rates or COVID rates to grow, So there is that shadow side to things sometimes with Jupiter when afflicted. Most of the aspects, though, that I see with Jupiter are pretty benign. But that is to say, the Neptune one, it has both sides to it for sure. There's Uranus that it could go either way, but it looks better, looks good. The Neptune one is the one that I feel like, while it's going to bring some really kind of dreamy and euphoric and otherworldly artistic and spiritual experiences, it's also going to bring a lot of overdoses, a lot of suicides, a lot of scams and cons and deception and illusion, fantasy, delusion, things like that. So both sides of the coin will be happening. We're dealing with the really sensitive energy here, and it can go either way. One of the things about the planets is that they can represent psychological feelings, they can represent people, they can represent external events, they can represent places, they can represent cars. Like Jupiter, psychologically, it's hope, it's optimism, it's faith. But the attitude, it's jolly, it's jovial, it's friendly. As a person, it could be a professor or a philosopher or a lawyer or a judge or a priest or a rabbi or a guru. As a concept, it's good fortune, it's grace, it's abundance, it's prosperity, expansion, growth, distribution, anything large and big. In events, it would be big parties, opulent parties, wealthy, rich parties. In a place, it could be a mosque or a temple or a courtroom, a university. It could be the Supreme Court, it could be Congress, it could be Senate. All of those are very Jupiterian things that I just named. And so you see how the planets move through people, places, things, cars. And once you learn the archetype, you can see how it presents in each different sector of our lives. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully it does. And what else did I want to say? There's some really good aspects going on. On January 3rd, this one is important. Jupiter squares the nodes, and this is the north node of Gemini and the south node of Sagittarius. So you would have to look to the houses, the mutable axis of your chart. But there is a big turning point happening. And again, I just want to reiterate, you have to recognize the blessing to receive it. On January 18th, Jupiter is sextile Vesta. This is really high priestess energy. It's also very magnified devotion. February 4th, Mars is sextile Jupiter. This is really exciting. This is something blowing up big. This is really fertile ground for achieving goals. It's a great money-making aspect. It's a very creative aspect. It's good for expansion and business. February 17th, Jupiter sextiles Uranus. This is a big surprise, a big good luck surprise. It could be an auspicious encounter with a stranger that brings good fortune. It could be something that just blows up really big. Fireworks, an unexpected, huge gift of some kind. Or, you know, in the stock market, it could be like the huge growth of an unexpected stock. Uranus always brings in the strange, the unexpected, because it's in Taurus, it's money. The Taurus, Jupiter, Pisces, Uranus, it's very fertile growth. March, the sun is conjunct Jupiter, March 5th. That is a lot of good luck, hope, optimism. March 20th, Mercury is conjunct Jupiter in Pisces. This is like really good communication around the dream. This is great communication. It's emotional communication, good news, big news. April 8th, Jupiter is sextile the North Node in Taurus and trine the South Node in Scorpio. This is real rebirth energy. Now the Renaissance is really taking off, I think, around this time. And April 12th, it's the conjunction with Neptune. And that is, you know, I talked a lot about that in the first video, but it has its powerful and great side. It has its very dangerous side. It has this very, you know, fantasy, magical, transcendental, inspired artistry, beautiful offerings in film and music and dance and all of those Neptunian things. It looks like great for medicine. It looks like many more people getting the vaccine, but it also looks like many more people getting the virus. It looks like more fake news, more confusion, more chaos, just like really big everything, like big beauty and big confusion all at once. It's kind of like a whirlpool of emotion and creativity and mysticism, but also delusion and fantasy and addiction. And, you know, so it's a really kind of very sublime energy. I'm very interested to see how it pans out for us. And then April 30th, Venus is conjunct Jupiter, which is very auspicious, very beautiful, poetic, you know, artistic, gracious, abundant, merciful, beautiful energy. And then, you know, again, the shadow side of Jupiter and aspects can be overindulgence if it's afflicted, arrogance, overdoing it, being complacent, entitled, privileged, taking things for granted, resting on your laurels, not recognizing the opportunity. Again, you know, you have to recognize the blessing to receive it. And that is my part 2 on Jupiter. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a part 3, but more likely I think I'm going to get into doing videos for some of the other transits, like the Pluto return and the nodal shift that's coming. And maybe I'll do a video that's just like on the first quarter of 2022. I'm going to start trying to do more frequent, more casual, conversational videos about the transits and the planets. And let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about, and I would be glad to do a video about that as well. So thank you so much for joining me. I love talking about astrology. Happy Jupiter in Pisces. Find that Pisces area of your chart and swim in it in 2022. You know, don't forget it's your solace and refuge.